Are recording. All right, cool. So happy Friday, everybody. We're here for our, God, what month is it? July, our July happy hour with our brand ambassador, Rebecca. I met Rebecca, I don't know, several years ago through my running group, and she's now one of my brand ambassadors. And she is a runner, hiker, kayaker, water lover, single mom of 3 teenage girls who are all amazing people and have done they've done stuff for me too. They're my house sitters and my babysitters and my dog sitters. So yeah, I've known Rebecca for a while and I'm excited to have her here to chat with us. So Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you and I'm going to, let's see, make you the spotlight for everybody here. And like every month, this is live streaming on Facebook. So I'm going to be following along on the Facebook feed. So if you have any questions on Facebook, feel free to drop those in the comments there and I'll relay those questions to Rebecca. So yeah, Rebecca, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks so much, Brittany. So like she said, I'm Rebecca and you might already be familiar with me from being a brand ambassador, though I definitely have more clothes on than the last time you saw me live. So that's always nice. So I became an ambassador for Brittany because I'm on a mission to help inspire women to create more confidence and self-love for themselves. And historically, I've done this through a whole lot of writing. I've also done this with my professional career. I work with displaced homemakers at a local college to be able to help them get retrained after leaving some kind of marriage situation, whether it was by force or divorce or even death of a spouse, anyone that needs that help to get back on their feet. So I've been doing that for about 13 years. So I am not new to working with women by any stretch. But about a year ago, I became a certified coach with a company called Vibrant Happy Women. And that has been an amazing opportunity to be able to work with women more one-on-one. I primarily work with women who are coming off of some kind of trauma background. I have that myself with experience with 2 divorces from abusive marriages. So that tends to be more my clientele of folks that have also gone through that themselves and are looking to take the lessons learned from surviving and getting out of those types of situations and bring them forward into building a life that they love. I've also been certified in mental health first aid and trauma-informed coaching. So those 2 things definitely help me a lot in my work that I do around building self-love, self-confidence, self-trust. And my belief is that anyone can learn to rewire your own brain for self-love, courage, confidence, and that a key component to doing so is by learning to face and to feel our really big emotions, right? If you're here, you probably saw the intro there about coming to face your tough emotions. And that allows us to let them go, because when we ignore them or bury them, they come along for the ride, right? They're still there, they're just hidden. And then they come out through little things like passive aggression or nitpicky comments or any number of those little things that we're like, oh my gosh, why do I act like that? Or in my case, what I think is like, oh my gosh, I opened my mouth and my mother came out. Like, I don't want to be like that. And for myself, that came from burying those feelings for a long time. I thought I was supposed to be just positive all the time, and that meant ignoring the bad. And so I was like an ostrich, just like head in the sand. I'm going to pretend that this stuff doesn't exist because all of this other stuff is what I should be grateful for, right? But if we leave them there for long enough, they end up making a new home in our body, and they end up manifesting as diseases and other hurts. If you're not familiar with that concept, I highly recommend reading The Body Keeps Score. It's all about how trauma lives within our body and how we can start to heal our physical self through healing our mental state as well. And they also, when we push them down, what I've noticed is they build up and they erupt at exactly the wrong time, right? Like that's where I spent my 20s, is pushing emotions down, and then they would erupt. And then I was labeled things like volatile or dramatic and thought that they were right because I had those volcanic actions. So I want you to think about that big emotion. Maybe you thought about it before you came, the one that you are afraid to let yourself feel. So think about the feelings that you have within you that you've repressed, that one that you're worried that it might indicate to the world that you're a terrible person if someone knew that you felt it. Think about that big feeling that you try desperately not to feel because you worry that it makes you your negative mother, your bitter aunt, that resentment-filled friend, all of those people that you don't like to be around, and you're so afraid that if you let yourself feel that, you're going to become that. Maybe think about that good vibes only post that made you wonder how everyone would judge you if they knew how you really felt behind that smile that you give the world. And let's take a minute and just think about those things for just a second. And when you identify that feeling, write it down or hold it in your thoughts, or if you're really brave, type it in the chat. And Brittany can read those off if there's any that are there. And just think about what that might look like for you. It might look like anger. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's leading with negativity, inadequacy, body hatred, resentfulness, bitterness, guilt, failure, overwhelm, sadness, jealousy, loneliness. Maybe it's regretfulness. Maybe it's humiliation. So as you think about that feeling within your body, think about how does it make you feel? Can you name that one feeling? There's probably several, right? Like we tend to hold on to things as women, but I want you to just focus on one. I see you reading. Is there something there in the chat? Inadequacy came up.
Yeah, I was gonna say inadequacy was what was shared on Facebook as well.
Okay, that's a big one. Inadequacy, right? We're so scared of not being enough, so fearful of not being enough, that imposter syndrome that takes over. Even when we're an expert in what we're talking about, that feeling of imposter syndrome just really can take over, and we hide it. We hide it well. We fake it till we make it. And we wonder, are we ever going to make it, or are we always faking it? And so I've seen a new thing going around, making its rounds on social media, of face it until you make it. So that's what we're going to work on, is facing those feelings so that we can embody them more fully as our own. So as you think about that feeling, let's use inadequacy. How does it make you feel? Does it bog you down? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel like it's right there on the edge, ready to explode the second your husband loads the dishwasher wrong, or your kid says mommy one too many times, or your coworker asks for one too many favors? How would it feel if you gave yourself full permission to feel that feeling without any judgment, to feel that feeling of inadequacy without any judgment that you should not have to feel that way? That feeling of resentfulness without any judgment that you should feel something different. What if you gave yourself permission to look at those feelings as an indicator and get super curious about what that feeling is trying to show you, instead of covering it up, ignoring it, stuffing it down, or drowning it in booze or sugar?
Say on Facebook, we have somebody saying that it results for her in a tension headache. And when she pauses to feel it, then it's just sobbing.
Yeah, and sometimes that feeling of sobbing is what keeps us from feeling it, right? We know we have to keep it together to deal with whatever's going on in our life. And I know for me in the past too, I've wondered, like, maybe I'm never going to stop, right? If I allow myself to feel this and to sob, is the sobbing going to stop? That can be exhausting too. And so sometimes we live in that fear rather than in the feeling of it, and giving ourselves the space to be able to do that. I want to give an example about when it's okay, when we've socialized that it's okay to live in these negative feelings, right? Like when you're experiencing a time of loss, nobody gives a second thought to allowing yourself to express that grief, right? That it's okay to be sad, you can cry, only for as long as is acceptable, right? And then you need to get it together and go back to work, go back to being a mom, do all of the things, right? But we recognize that that feeling serves a very real purpose in processing the grief, right? That even though it's a quote unquote negative emotion, we know that that feeling is there to feel, and it's not who we become. We might let ourselves do the sobbing and to cry and wonder, are we ever going to stop crying about this loss? But we allow ourselves to do that because it's acceptable, right? We've told ourselves the story that it's acceptable. And yet we've all been in places where people are incredibly sad and somebody makes a joke and we laugh through the tears. And that gives us a prime example that shows us we are not the sadness. That is not who we are. It's simply a feeling to feel. They're simply indicators. So what story do we tell ourselves about those indicators? What meanings do we assign to them? And why do we allow ourselves to be sad, but only for so long? Why is that the story we tell? Why do we allow ourselves to feel angry for something that happened to a friend, but not for something that happened to us? And if you come from a line of negative women, as many women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s do, and we're trying desperately to break these patterns. We see this on like almost a global level right now, of women waking up and saying, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to live with bitterness and resentment and negativity. But it's almost expressed itself in that term toxic positivity, right? Of like putting on that happy face, pretending like everything is fine, practicing your good vibes only. And that's super important, right? There's so much science behind the power of positive thinking and optimism, and that's so good, but it's only part of the picture. So as you think about practicing all of your gratitude for what you should be grateful for, are you secretly simmering in anger about something? Are you feeling that hidden jealousy behind the congratulatory praise or the hate likes that you give your friends social media? Are you afraid that you'll no longer be accepted or loved or praised if your loved ones knew the truth, right? If you're giving a presentation and somebody knows that you're feeling those feelings of inadequacy or whatever it is story that you've told yourself, are you afraid that you'll no longer be loved or accepted? That you receive that praise of being told you're so strong. Wow, how did you get through that? That's so strong. That's the number one thing we tell each other, right? We hear these stories of something that somebody has been through and we say, wow, you're so strong. And the person you're telling that to thinks, no, I just got through whatever I needed to, right? Like it was just life. You did what you needed to. And so you're afraid, like, what if I told them that it was hard, that it was horrible, that I cried every day for a year, that I slept every day for a year? What if you told those stories instead? Would you still be accepted? Would you still be strong? So we tell ourselves those stories, all of those triggering things. And we live in that world that floods us with the messages to stay positive, right? That floods us with that toxic positivity, those mantras of love and light. And I like to think about it in terms of when we look at a picture and we only see light, we see nothing. If we look at a picture and we only see darkness, we see nothing. Those of us who live in this area, as you drive over the 205 bridge in the dark, you can't see Mount Hood. But if you drive over the 205 bridge on a super sunny day, you also can't see Mount Hood. It's blocked out by the light. And so we can only see it when both the light and the dark are represented, when both the light and the shadows are there. You think about driving into the sun and you can't see the road. And we know that that's a huge hazard, right? And yet the same is true in our own lives. If we only look for the good and we only focus on the good, then we might be ignoring some very real things that need to be addressed in order for us to create those lives of joy. Because the truth is, making up our minds to be happy is way more than grin or bear it. I listened to a podcast several years ago that taught me this message because I was very much living in that space of like, well, you just have to choose to be happy. This is your life. So like, figure it out, put on that smile and go with it. And the speaker, and I wish I remembered who it was, but they were talking about how no, choosing to be happy means choosing to look at the things we need to do differently. If that means we need to eat better, if that means we need to take our antidepressant medicine, if that means we need to avoid that toxic family member, if that means we need to leave an abusive situation, all of those things are hard to face, but they're also necessary in choosing to build a life of happiness. And so it also means that we reclaim our feelings. We reclaim them as ours, we reclaim them as valid. And I want to lead us through a short meditation on that, but just wanted to take time for questions before we do that too. If there was anything that came up. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, I was going to say, we've had a couple people join us on Zoom here as well. And I've got some people following along on Facebook. So does anybody have any questions for Rebecca before she moves on at this point? And I will say that Facebook has a bit of a lag to it, so they might pop up here in a second.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Just thinking about reclaiming those big feelings as yours, as valid, even if they're tough to feel, even if you feel like you're not supposed to be feeling them.
So I'm not seeing any questions, so I think you're probably safe to move
Okay.
on here.
Okay, so I want to lead you through a little meditation to help you reclaim those feelings. This isn't necessarily to feel them, because sometimes those are going to be way too big, right? Just as whoever commented that on Facebook of feeling them results in endless sobbing sometimes, right? Or maybe I'm making that up, or just, telling you what it does for me. So you might not necessarily be in a space where you can fully feel those feelings yet, or to address them, but we're going to lead you through a little meditation on reclaiming them as your own, and reclaiming them as valid. So if you want to put your feet on the floor and close your eyes, I'll have you put your hand on your heart and take 3 deep breaths. And I want you to envision yourself in your happy place. Maybe you're by the beach, maybe you're by a lake, maybe you're in the forest, on a mountain, maybe in your own backyard. And keeping that hand on your heart, think about the negative emotion that you came to earlier. Let's use that inadequacy, because that came up in a couple of places. Envision what that feeling feels like in your body. Envision what it looks like. Does that feeling have a color? Does it have a texture? Does it swirl around? Does it have a feeling of heaviness to it? What story does that feeling carry with it? If you're using the feeling of inadequacy, does that come from maybe somebody telling you when you were younger that you can't do that thing that you think you can do? Does it come from being told no? Does it come from being told that you don't fit the mold? Do those other feelings that you might be thinking of carry the weight of being told you're too dramatic, or too sensitive, or too whatever? And what history does that feeling carry with it? Does it carry the history of an overly negative mom that was super critical? Does it carry the history of somebody that you desperately don't want to become? Does it carry the history of bitterness or resentful people in your family line? And what fear does that feeling carry with it? Does it carry the fear of engulfment, that if you let yourself cry or yell, that you may never stop? Does it carry the fear of finally facing something that you've known for a long time needs to change? And the fear of wondering, how on earth am I going to change that? If I keep sweeping it under the rug, I don't have to face it. So go ahead and keep your hand on your heart. Take a big breath in and give yourself permission to own those feelings. They are yours. And as you breathe out, let go of the attachment that this feeling has to other people who aren't you. As you take a deep breath in, say, I give myself permission to feel this feeling of bitterness, this feeling of resentment, this feeling of inadequacy. Breathe out and release the guilt of feeling that negativity, the guilt of feeling I can't be positive with this feeling right now. Breathe in and give yourself permission to look at what that feeling is here to teach you. What is that feeling trying to tell you? What is that feeling indicating that something needs to change in your life? Whether that's just needing more time, more self-care. Breathe out and release those feelings of shoulds. That I should be over this. I should feel different. I should be grateful. Breathe in permission to feel those feelings as your own. And breathe out, releasing any of the shoulds, any of the guilt, any of the attachments to other people. Just take a couple more deep breaths in. And envision that going forward and giving yourself permission to feel these feelings, to address the indicators, to know that you won't be engulfed by them. They're just feelings. They're just feelings to feel. Go ahead and take one more big breath in and release it and come on back together. And recognize that you might need to spend some time feeling those big feelings, that those self-care pieces of a bubble bath or journaling or a walk in the woods or a run, those are all great places to continue that work of release. And that some of those feelings may take time to fully see and to fully feel what they're here to tell you. But as you fully feel them, as you fully see them, you'll be able to let them go. You'll be able to address what they're here to tell you and be able to make those changes that need to be made in your life to address them. Maybe it's boundaries that you need to set with somebody in your life. Maybe it's better boundaries you need to set with yourself. Those are always the hard ones for me. But whatever those feelings are here to indicate. Okay. And as you go forward, I want you to know too, that there's a lot of science behind this too, right? That just as there's science behind the power of positive thinking, there's a lot of science behind the power of feeling your feelings, that as humans, we're designed to have this great big range of emotions, not just these few that we've deemed positive or socially acceptable, that it's okay to feel them. And so you can give yourself permission to do that without worrying that you're going to fall into becoming an angry person or becoming that resentful person, that it's okay to feel them. And I totally lost my place in my notes. I'll be totally honest right there. But I just want to thank you and just reiterate that self-love includes facing and feeling and owning all of our big emotions. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have there too. And just thank you for the honor of being able to witness that with you.
Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, definitely pop on in, pop them in the chat. If you feel like talking, unmute yourself and feel free to ask your question. I will say while we're giving Facebook land a little bit of time to catch up, Alexis has said, I need you as my new therapist. So that kind of leads me into the question of, if people want to find out more about you or are interested in working with you, how do they go about doing that?
Absolutely. So you can find me on primarily Instagram as Wild Radiant Love. I'm sure that we can pop the link up there, or at wildradiantlove.com. And I do one-on-one coaching where I work with women. I do a lot of meditations. I also work with you to help you take that next step from your own self. I don't believe in giving a prescription of 1, 2, 3, do these things, and then you'll be able to do this other thing, right? But there's so many of those things that exist of like, follow me for exactly how to, change your life. I believe in the power of your own intuition and your own wisdom. And so that's my coaching practice, is helping you find that your own intuition and make your own decisions based off of what you know, not based off of what I'm going to tell you to do, because I'm just going to ask you more questions. I also offer, there's some digital offerings there on my website as well. You can have a self-love workbook delivered to your email. You can send me a message and I'm happy to provide you with some free resources as well, including one called Feel It to Heal It, that can help you take these feelings even further. Of if you have some particularly deep ones and you want to learn how to let them go, we can definitely help with that. And there's some free resources, or I'm happy to chat with you one-on-one as well.
All right, cool. I don't see any questions. I see, I love everything you said and loved this thank you. So I think the ladies in the group were just happy to hear what you had to say. So yeah, if anybody else is like watching the replay on this and has any questions, feel free to drop them in. I've tagged Rebecca on the post on the group, so she should get notified of those questions as well, and we'll make sure that they get answered for you. So yeah, to those on Zoom, thank you for joining us. It looks like your cameras are all off, so I'm not going to call on any of you to ask any questions or anything, but thanks for being here. And you guys all have a great weekend. Happy Friday and enjoy your weekend. So I'm going to go ahead. So much. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the live Zoom. So bye to everybody in Facebook land. Okay, and I'm stopping the recording now as well.